There are very few players from the 2021 NBA draft, or even the last couple of drafts for that matter, that you can confidently say have a higher upside than Jalen Green. Jalen Green is one of those players where you look at all of the tools that they have at their disposal, the athleticism that they possess, and you can't help but sit there and think about what kind of player they're going to be if everything clicks the right way. Although he didn't win Rookie of the Year, his rookie season was unbelievable. Over the course of the 2022 season, he had the most 40-point games by a rookie, the most 30-point games by a rookie, the most 20-point games by a rookie, the most games with 5 3-pointers made by a rookie, and the most games with 4 3-pointers made by a rookie. Now, you can sit there and talk about, oh, he was chucking up shots on a losing team, but realistically, how much is there to be taken away from these performances? When a player does something once, you might be able to convince me that it was a fluke, but when they're doing it as often as Jalen Green was, it gets a lot more difficult to make me believe that this can't eventually become the norm for him. One of the immediate gripes that people are going to have with Jalen Green, if they just take a glance at his box score stats, is the fact that he shot 42.6% from the field, which is what a lot of people would consider some underwhelming efficiency. But I also think there's some important context to take into consideration with that number, and I don't really think it tells the whole story. Here's a look at what his shot profile looks like. The guy is pretty much taking just shots inside the paint and perimeter shots. While his numbers may not fit the strict definition of efficient, his shot diet most definitely is one that's conducive to what modern NBA statistics deem as an efficient shot. Outside of all 954 of his shots during his rookie season, 75% of those came either from three-point range or at the rim. Considering he was a 68% shooter at the rim, I'd say that's a pretty comfortable distribution of shots overall. Anyone who's watched even just one Rockets game this season is probably very aware at this point of how unbelievable of an athlete Jalen Green is. The amount of bounce and burst in a relatively slight frame is incredibly unusual. His ability to worm his way around his defenders and quickly change directions at the basket makes it nearly impossible to stay in front of him if you're defending him in a one-on-one situation. He's just too crafty, too shifty to just rely strictly on your lateral quickness to stay in front of him. One of the moves that he goes to incredibly often is this one here, where he'll initiate a baseline drive before stopping and pulling the ball back to draw the defender forward closer to him. And then he immediately drives baseline again to get them on their heels to have to make a really difficult recovery. They're usually forced behind him and he's able to get to the basket before they can recover. He also makes some really great midair adjustments, whether that's switching to his offhand to get a better angle, or utilizing up and unders or putting it high off the glass out of reach of his defenders. His dexterity at the rim is really one of the most impressive parts of his game that makes him such a dangerous finisher. Also, his ability to utilize his hesitation is going to create a ton of problems for defenses like it already did during his rookie season. He's a really solid ball handler, and he does a good job at keeping the ball on a string to manipulate his defenders and keep some directional flexibility when getting to the rim. Another aspect of his finishing ability that is a pretty telltale sign of a guy having star scoring potential is his ability to finish through contact. He really doesn't shy away from contact at the rim, something that I think is really important for being able to have the highest level of impact with your scoring in today's NBA. He was able to be a 68% finisher at the rim, a percentage that's not only impressive for a first-year player, but that's a percentage impressive for literally any guard in the league. I think something Jalen Green does that really doesn't get a ton of praise is how he's able to operate in an off-ball role. Yes, he's an amazing shot creator, which I'm going to get to in a minute, but some of the appeal to Jalen Green, at least to me, is the fact that he's proven he doesn't need the ball in his hands to get open and that he can operate seamlessly alongside other ball handlers, a trait that I think is going to be hugely important to his success as well as Houston's whenever they're ready to contend again. He's going to have to share the ball with other players, and the fact that he can already do that and it's not something that's going to be a major adjustment for him is really promising for their long-term success. You've got a guy who can not only create his own shot in isolation, but he can also hit catch and shoot threes, and he can also attack closeouts in a way that regular off-ball wings can't. His athleticism gives him such an advantage with attacking closeouts that it makes him lethal playing alongside a primary facilitator who's focused on getting him the ball on the wing. Now, the real icing on the cake with Jalen Green, in my opinion, is his absurd perimeter creation ability. Now, some people are going to look at his 34% three-point shooting during his rookie season and potentially criticize it as inefficient because it was below league average, but for me, 34% on the volume he was shooting is perfectly fine for a first-year player, considering a lot of rookies aren't great three-point shooters starting out. If anything, given the difficulty of the shots that he was taking from beyond the arc, I'd go as far as saying this level of efficiency is actually pretty impressive. The amount of space that he generates on his step backs is pretty crazy. He creates some of the most separation in the league when it comes to his step back triples. He knows when to leverage it as well. He doesn't just spam it without reason. Like here, he uses the screen up top to get separation from Lu Dort, but when he recognizes that 𝙖𝙗𝙤𝙪 is dropped back on the coverage, Greene just steps back into a ton of open space to pull the shot. Here, he's in isolation, and he's going to fake the drive up the middle, forcing his defender to start moving downhill before getting into a sidestep jumper that creates a mountain of space between him and his defender, and he ends up knocking down the shot. He really likes to use the threat of his driving ability to open up shots for himself. A lot of the time, defenders will be more focused on preventing his drives to the rim, allowing him to just take easy space to get into an open three-point shot. There's a complexity and a simplicity to his perimeter creation because sometimes he'll do some crazy step back or sidestep that leaves you with your jaw dropped, and then other times he'll just come off of a screen and get into a wide open three that looks absolutely effortless. Either way, his perimeter shooting package is the real deal, and it's going to be something that contributes to his ability to elevate into one of the top scorers in the entire league as he continues to develop. Also, defensively, I think there's some intriguing potential for him. He fits that kind of Anthony Edwards philosophy on defense where you can say that he has all the tools in the world to be a great defender. It really just depends on things like effort and how much his defensive instincts develop. He was a solid isolation defender last year, which is promising. It's kind of hard for me to judge guys on rebuilding teams when it comes to defense, so I'm not prepared to make a ton of sweeping assumptions about what he's ultimately going to top out as when it comes to the defensive end of the floor, but I think there's plenty to look at and be excited about. So what are some realistic expectations for Jalen Green? What does his rookie season tell us about the type of player that he's potentially capable of becoming? To answer this question, let's take a look at how Jalen Green stacked up in Cerebro's 5-metric suite as a rookie, something that I like to use to assess a player's ability in 5 major areas of the game. He had a pure scoring prowess of 74, a three-point efficiency of 80, floor general skills of 63, at the rim ability of 53, and defensive statistical impact of 65. If you take a look at players who achieved these metrics since 2015, there's a couple of players that really stand out in terms of comparisons. You've got James Harden and Zach LaVine, 2 guys who accomplished multiple seasons of these baseline metrics. First of all, what a coincidence that James Harden is on that list, another Houston Rocket. Second, Jalen Green is the only guy who's done this as a rookie, so it's reasonable to think that this is just a baseline for him. There are very clear avenues for Jalen Green to continue to improve upon these already really impressive numbers. If the Rockets snagged potentially a James Harden-esque player, that's absolutely incredible value for a number 2 overall pick. And even if he tops out as a Zach LaVine level player, that's a massive win. The question to me becomes, what does his playmaking top out at, and what does his defense top out at? I think it's a little less important that he becomes some elite defender. Is it possible that he does? Absolutely. But I think the offensive skills are the primary draw with Jalen in the areas in which his contributions are going to be able to be felt the most. For his playmaking, I don't think he needs to become James Harden as a playmaker. James Harden is probably a top 10 greatest playmaker ever, so putting those kinds of expectations on Jalen Green would be pretty unrealistic. But him being able to really leverage that scoring gravity into easy opportunities for his teammates is going to be something that can take his game to a new stratosphere and turn him into a very versatile offensive weapon. But regardless of those swing skills, there's pretty much zero doubt in my mind that Jalen Green will become a star caliber player in the very near future. His scoring arsenal is just too well-rounded not to be excited about his upside. He's one of those guys that I could see averaging 30 points per game in multiple seasons and securing some scoring titles throughout his career, and I personally can't wait to watch it unfold. If you guys enjoyed this video and you like NBA content like this and you want to see more, please consider subscribing and leaving a like on this video. That's the #1 way to support me and help me continue to make content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.